works at Trust and Safety at Google. Vivek, are you in this call?
Yes, Aniket, on this call.
Yeah, cool. So let's start this call. Over to you, Vivek.
Yeah, so I'm Vivek, and I work at Google in trust and safety. So many of you don't know what trust and safety is. I'd like to go through it briefly. So at trust and safety at Google, we like take care of the mishaps that happens with your articles, news, or any kind of content. So I personally work in trust and safety news. So at trust and safety news, if someone publish an article that is not that violates our policy, so we have a set of policies which we like go through and check if a certain article is violating our policy. If it does violate our policy, we flag those articles and it escalates. So you might have seen when you search something related to uh, like torrent and all, or so or some or something that is or something that violates our policy, you can check that there are comments saying that this link has been removed because of the policies. So that is the work of trust and safety. Yeah.
Vivek, do you want to present this slide or do you want me to do this?
I present slide. No, you can do it, please, please.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Do let me know when to do next. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Should we go next then?
Yeah. Yeah, so why JavaScript? Any one of you who has experience with JavaScript or has worked on it, please can you speak up? Yeah, Shivam, if you can open your mic, it would be amazing.
Let's keep this session interactive. If you want to speak, just raise your hand, open up your mic, and can
Anirudh, if you
speak
like
there.
to speak, please.
Yeah, Hirdesh, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
Hirdesh, go ahead.
Uh, Hello, Vivek.
Yeah, Hirdesh, I
Yeah,
can hear you.
basically, I have some kind of experience of JavaScript. I have created two or three projects, major projects on it.
Yeah.
So what are you expecting from it?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know you, what were the kind of projects that you were doing? Was it something basic, or was it something that you were really interested in? I would like to know about it.
I have built two or three basic type projects, like portfolio and all. And
Yeah.
one project is a major project which I am building currently. So it's
Yeah.
basically I'm working on a, you can say through it, my final year students of my college will be submitting their projects.
Amazing. So I would like to ask you something. When you were building your project, did you encounter some undefined error or reference error?
Mostly errors will be when we convert the data into JSON and then work on that
Okay,
JSON
so
package. Mostly error come in
amazing,
that part.
amazing. Let's move forward. So JavaScript is a language, and it is very easy to adapt, and it is a vital tool for web development, enabling them to create dynamic and stable and reliable web applications. So when you talk about dynamic, so dynamic means that JavaScript is used on server side, on client side, as well as we can also create applications for machine learning with JavaScript. So it is very dynamic and it is reliable, because the one we are like watching, we are having this session on Meet. So Meet also has some JavaScript component. Because of this JavaScript component, we are very like uh, we can be interactive on to each other, like you React and all. So that is done by JavaScript only, and there are some languages that try to copy JavaScript, but beneath it the JavaScript is there to guide you or to help you. Yeah, next please. So why use JavaScript? So there is rich ecosystem, cross-platform application, and ease of use. So when I talk about rich ecosystem, is that when you're building products, so you might encounter something that you don't know what to do with it. So there might be some packages on npm packages that you can look for, and there are hundreds of developers that help you to like get those uh, packages or the kind of code. So it is a very huge ecosystem, and you can find whatever you need very easily. And when I talk about cross platform application, is that you can build platforms for mobile, desktop, even IoTs, but it is not recommended to use IoT. It is not recommended to use JavaScript on IoT devices, as it can be a little slow. But it is cross-platform, and it can run on anywhere, like on server side, on client side. Ease of use. The main reason that JavaScript is being used all around the globe because of its ease of use. So any one of you can pick JavaScript in about a month, or in a month, like in 15 days you can get along with it, and you can build amazing stuff. So that is the reason JavaScript is regarded as one of the most used languages across all the languages. So it's basically on the first, it's in top 5 languages that are most used. Please, Ankit, go ahead. So some of the companies that use JavaScript, basically all companies use JavaScript. These are the number of these are the companies that I am able to put on the slide. But these like all the major players use JavaScript. Bec- Without JavaScript, nothing on the web can be possible. Nothing. I mean nothing. So there are languages like Flutter and all, but they do also use. They are inspired from JavaScript, and you need JavaScript to like work on them. So JavaScript is very crucial in today's age. As you know, Meta has created a wonderful, I would say, a package called React.js. So it is amazing, and all these companies use React.js regardless. React.js is heavily used across industries. So that's there. Next. So at JavaScript at Google News. This is very interesting. So uh, we at Google News, we use at TNS, we generally use JS to automate tasks in Google Sheets, because we have created a kind of language called AppScript at Google. So it is used to communicate with your Google Sheets, and you can automate tasks. So when I say automate task, it means like when we flag our policies. So if there is a policy and we need to flag it, we first use LLM, like we automate, we have so we get a tricks or a sheet. In this, there is the name of the person who has written that article, and the what that article is about, and what policies can it like tag to. So we used LLM to process. Acha, this article is on Iran-Iraq war. So what policies do we want to put it? So then the with the writer's name and with that subject of the article goes into an LLM, and that LLM processes the information and says that this is regarding war, and we have to put it in war. And then after that, we select that if this article is something that we want to flag, and we flag it. So it gets easy. And we also use JavaScript to prototype and test feasibility of our various approaches. So if there is something that I want to create and I don't know what to create, so basically we simply give an approach. For example, Hirdesh has built some small projects, so it was very easy for him to create because JavaScript is very easy to use. So that is why we use JavaScript to prototype, as because if we take any other language, it would take us around month or two just to prototype. But with JavaScript, in a month or two, we can prototype. We can go to fourth level of prototyping, like first level, which is a basic level, and then we can modify it and like make a better version of it. So that's why JavaScript is highly used in prototyping at Google. Next. So, any of you who knows what is execution context in JavaScript? Anyone of you? You can react or like do whatever you can
You
do.
can write it in the chat box, or if you wanna say something, you have to raise your hand.
Yeah, if you want, I wanted to know like, do you know about context execution in JavaScript? Any reactions, please? No, no, sir. Scope of variables, correct. Yeah, correct. Okay, so think execution context like a box. Like you can see execution context. Think of it as a box or a container where all the JavaScript code is executed. So whenever you write a JavaScript code, there is this box created, and that box has two components. First is memory component and the second component is code component. So the memory component stores your variables and execute stores your variable and functions, and the functions are stored as a string. The whole function is just copied to the memory context, and code context is used to run the code line by line, and it is the reason why you see errors such as undefined in JavaScript. So JavaScript is synchronous. That means it's execute in a specific order. It's single threaded. Only one command is executed at a time. But you have seen you can create multi-threaded applications. That is because of another library, which is like which you can find on npm packages, and with that you can create multi-threaded applications. But it is because of execution context, JavaScript can create a multi-threaded application. So that's that. And JavaScript relies on this beautiful execution context to function smoothly. So this is very important in JavaScript. Please. Yeah. So this is the execution context. There is this memory component where all the functions and variables are stored in key value pairs. So a variable a is stored as a colon 10, and a function is stored as fn colon and the whole function. And a code component one line at a time. So for example, here is a10 and var a is equals to 10 is ran here, and then the uh, the in memory component a is defined as 10. So that's there. I think it would be a lot easier if we could run code here. I'll give a feedback to meet team that to add a code editor in it. So no, next. Yeah, so what happens in inside the JavaScript engine? A global, whenever you see a code, a, a JavaScript engine, in a JavaScript engine, execution context is created. So in the first stage, memory creation happens. JavaScript first allocates memory to all the variables and the functions. For example, variable n square 3 and square 4 are initialized as undefined. Functions like square are stored with full code in the memory. And in the next phase, code execution, JavaScript now executes the code line by line. Variables are assigned actual values and functions are executed when invoked. Let me show you this code in work. Okay. Ani, Ankit, Ankit, if
Yeah,
I can share
stop
screen.
sharing my screen. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. Sure, sure, sure. So I hope you can see my screen.
yeah, it's visible.
Yeah. So this is the code, right? Yeah. So if you see var n is equals to 3, if I console log here, then n. So what will you see? 3, because उसके आगे function चलेगा ही नहीं. This is because of the execution context. And if I run this, then पूरा code चलेगा. Now I think this is fucked up. Sorry for that. There's some technical error on this site, but let's go ahead with the presentation. And so the variables are assigned actual values and function are executed when invoked. Next slide. Function invocation and execution context creation. So when a function is invoked, for example, square n, a new execution window is created. So whenever you call a function, a new execution window will be created. And in that execution context, all the variables and the functions will be stored, whatever are present on those, whatever is present in that function. So this to understand the whole execution context, actually it cannot be done in the time that we have. It takes a lot of time. I'm trying to rush through because I have to cover a lot of things. So I would suggest you to like contact me. I'll give you resources where from where you can like learn this execution context. It is the most asked question in JavaScript interviews. I personally have uh, given a lot of interviews and I have been asked the same kind of question. So the whenever you have been asked this question, try to remember that just there is a keyword which I have written, that it is considered that consider it as a box. So whenever they ask you what is execution context, tell them that it is kind of a box where box in which there are two components. First is memory component and then the second is code component. If you like give them this answer, they will not listen whatever you have to say next, or this is the only thing that they want to hear. Okay, so next slide. So you can see how the execution window is created. Execution context is created in two phases. First is memory phase. So whenever whatever code you have, so all the variables would be listed in key value pairs. Also remember that whenever there is an interview, the key value pair, if you say in memory component there exists a key value pair, that also like strengthen your answer. So try to remember these kind of words that interviewer wants to hear from you. And when it comes to code component, it is very simple. You can just say that in code component the code is executed line by line. So that's all. That's all what the interview wants to hear. Next. So what is hosting? Another very important questions that is asked in interviews is hosting. So what is hosting? Hosting is when you try to access a variable or a function before its execution. So in JavaScript, what happens is you get you get errors like undefined reference error. So most of the interviewers they try to ask like what is this error, like how, why do we get this error, because they want to understand your they want to understand how deeply you know about JavaScript. So these concepts like hosting and execution context come into play. And whenever the interview asks you this question, please refer to hosting or execution context. And there are other uh, things that you can refer to. So in simple words, JavaScript brings variables and function declaration to the top of their execution before execution, and this is called hosting. So how does it work? Memory list. Remember, I've created you in memory creation phase. Var variables are initialized as undefined. So whenever there is a uh, code, whenever you try to run this code, let me show you something. Aniket, Ankit, can you open a, VS Code? Or VS Code? Can you open a browser window, or should I do it? Or maybe Priyam, you can help
I
with
think
us. Try to open a. Um,
I think you can do this. Or let me try this.
no, when I try to do it, it shows some error. Uh, all of you can do it, but
I can show.
Hitesh, could you help in
I
this?
can show. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
so try to run this code. So already I have written that when you try to like run this code, you for get name, you will get answer as JavaScript, and console.log you will get undefined. So why do you think X is undefined but you have defined var as equals to 7?
Uh, because at serial wise it is below console.
Okay, so if you try it, but why does it says undefined? Because but you have already defined it. Wait a minute. Wait. Yeah, so you can see that it outputs JavaScript and undefined. And Priyam, if you can like uh, console.log get name. No, first let me ask you, what would you get if I try to console log get name function? If anyone of you can answer it, try to run it. Code of the function exactly. So why does it happen that when you try to console.log get name, you get a whole function, and when you console.log x before execution, you get undefined? It is because of hoisting. Because somewhere JavaScript knows that you have defined x, but it has not like stored that value. Yeah, someone has had a question. Yeah, please. So I think it was Nisa. Okay. So whenever you try to like run this code, you can see that if even if you call a variable before its initialization, you get a undefined error, and not like uh, not a reference error, because you do not have a variable x. I think if anyone of you has a question, because I think you should ask a question here. No? So let me go through it again. Get name function, when you invoke get name function, it gives you JavaScript, because in the code, in the memory creation phase, whole code is stored. So when you call this function, the whole code creates a creates an other execution context, and from there you can, and from there the code execution component runs and gives you console.log JavaScript. But when you console.log x, the code execution window tries to run that code, and in the code execution phase there is no value assigned to x, so that is why it gives undefined. I hope you understand. It is something that will take practice, but let's see. Next one, Ankit. So what is scope? So scope is the area in the code where a variable or a function is accessible. I think all of you know this, and in college we are taught this. For example, in a code below, the variable b is accessible with the function a, but not outside of it. So if you look at this code, function a, where we have defined a variable b is equals to 10, and we have called a function c, and then we have defined that function where console.log is b, and then we try to call the function a, and when we console.log b, there is a error where b is not defined, so b is undefined. Why do you think b is undefined? Anyone? No? Okay.
Because it's
Sir,
declared in
because
that function, that code of block.
Yeah, please repeat.
Because sir, it's been declared in that function. The scope is within the function.
Yeah, correct. So if so when I try to run this function b, so you can when I try to console.log b, b tries to like look for the function, uh, and it is inside that function, so you cannot console.log b, because there is no function b or variable b, so that is why it prints undefined. But because there is this var b and it is defined as 10, so that is why you get a undefined error and not a reference error, if that makes sense. Next. So what is a lexical environment? A structure that stores variables and function declaration, created whenever an execution context is created. Local memory plus reference to its parent's lexical environment. Lexical refers to the hierarchy in which functions are defined within other functions or global scope. So let's understand this. You are in your house. Your house is an execution, a context. And if you want, like, for example, I can use my things because they are mine, and I can also use my father's thing because they are, because I have access to them. And for example, if I go to someone else's house and I try to access something from some other's father, I won't be able to, because of lexical hierarchy, because I don't have access to them, because वो foreign object है and वो उस execution context के बाहर है, so that is why I won't be able to access those. So this is lexical environment. So for example, a code and उसके ऊपर जो है, पहले समझ लो there is a child and उसके ऊपर father, that is your lexical environment. तुम वहां पर जो भी चीजें हैं एक्सेस कर सकते हो, ठीक है, and you cannot access things outside of it, so that is not in your lexical environment. And what is scope chain? Definition is a chain of lexical environments that JavaScript engine follows to find variables. If a variable isn't found in that current function local's memory, it looks in the environment of its parent company. So what it says is कि तुम्हारे तुम्हारे घर में you can access तुम्हारे in your family you can access things from your fathers or mothers, you can access fathers or mothers things. Similarly, if there are a lot of context execution, for example at your uncle's place, you can also go there and look for things. So स्कोप चेन इज सिमिलर टू दैट, बट किसी भी फॉरेन ऑब्जेक्ट में, किसी भी फॉरेन प्लेस में जाके तुम एक्सेस नहीं कर सकते, सो दैट इज not in scope. So whatever in scope, you can access it, and that is called scope chaining. These types of questions are not asked in interviews, especially scope chaining, lexical environment. They ask a bit, but they don't care if you don't know. Next, Sunny. So how does a scope chain work? So you can read it. Function C searches for B in its local memory. So there is a function C and it searches for B in the local memory. If it doesn't find B, it checks in its lexical environment. That is function A. So it gets what it needs from function A, finds B in A and memory, find B in A's memory and prints the value 10. So you can see it can look above its function. So like you can access your father's things. So similarly, it try to relate it to your family issues. So you can like retain it in your mind. Next. So this is a concept that is highly asked in interviews. I would recommend you to like learn what is context execution, hoisting, varlet, constant temporal dead zone. So these are the kind of like when you give interviews, especially for front end interviews and React interviews. So this is the core concept they ask you. So what is hoisting and temporal dead zone? So hoisting both let and const variables are hoisted, but they behave differently from var. While var variables can be accessed before initialization, remember we can access var variable and it gives an undefined error. So it says that you can access var before initialization, but it will give an undefined error. While let and const are not accessible until they are initialized. So you cannot even access those variables like we used to do with var. They exist in temporal zone until the initialization. So if you try to console.log before initialization, you will get a reference error and not an undefined error. It is a very important question that is asked in interviews. When will I get a reference error and when will I get a undefined error? So if any one of you has doubt between reference error and undefined error, this is the right time to ask, and if not, we can proceed.
So
Yes,
apart from interview, these things are very important in development. So you have to do these things. Okay. And apart from interview, these things are very basics, and you should look these things and these concepts because this will be really helpful in your developments. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, thank you so much. So in case A is hoisted but cannot be accessed before line there is a reference error. So I hope you understand the difference between a reference error and an undefined error. If you can react, Sanskar Dubey, if you can tell me something, it would be great.
Yes sir, all clear sir. Like you have said कि console log हमने A किया तो sir we cannot like access that thing before like defining it. So this is reference error and like other than it's like undefined error when we like use the scope problem like that.
Exactly, exactly. So next, I think that's clear. What is temporal dead zone? So I have like whenever you try to access a variable let or const, like whenever you try to access let and const, so you cannot access them before its initialization like we used to do with var. So at that point of time you will get a reference error. And when you talk about from accessing, for example, look into your chat. If I write console dot log x and यहाँ से लेके, so there are dots, let's put dots, and const x is equals to 10. So when you see these dots, you can see the dots. So this is your temporal dead zone. In this zone, you cannot access access value. You will always get a reference error. So this is called temporal dead zone. And this is how I explained my interviewer, and he was very impressed. Like, he knows the concepts. Next. So this is also a very important concept. Let var and const. So if you see var or block scope cannot be accessed before initialization, cannot be accessed before initialization, cannot be redeclared in the same scope. So you cannot redeclare let variables in the same scope. You will get an error. Similarly, const is also the difference between let and const is uh, it's not much of a difference, it is more of a mindset. So you can use let whenever you want, you cannot use const in your code, but where const helps is like you are creating something and you want a variable, that should not change at all in the whole process of your code execution. So use const. You can also use let, but it is recommended you use const. So it shows your interviewer that yes, he knows that where to use const and let. So there's not much of a difference between const and let. The main difference is between const, let, and var. So var is not block scope, and interviewer, if you write var in your code, and interviewer will definitely ask you that why have you used var and why not let or const? Why not let? Const तो नहीं बोलेगा, but why have you used var and not const, not let? So you have to explain that you can use const for variable that won't change. First point, use let for variables that might change. Avoid using var to prevent hosting issues and bug related to global scope. You should, I feel like you should copy these 3 lines, and you can like tell your interviewer whenever he asks whenever he asks questions regarding const, let, or var, because I have used these same lines of these same sentences in a lot of interviewers, to a lot of interviews.
We'll share them in our email, Vivek.
Okay, sure.
Should we go next then?
Yeah. So block scope and shadowing is similar to, I would say, let and const. So yeah, someone had a doubt.
Yes, sir. Sir, then, matlab, like I have already seen this. Ki, like people avoid war. So, sir, what is the point of like adding war in JavaScript now? Like JavaScript continuously removing like extra stuffs in there, and from the libraries and all those JavaScript code that are pre-built, which is given to us. So, why they are not removing this var? Matlab, like, what is the importance of this variable kind of?
So a very good question. So if you ask why they are not removing var, so var is something that has, so JavaScript was created in 2005, and the only way to define variable was var. So if they try to remove var from its language, then the code written like 20 years ago would not function properly. That is the reason they're not removing var. I hope you get your answer. Amazing. Variables declared with let and const are only accessible within the block they are defined. So when you, so try to, because we use let and const because it is very easy for us to think in a structured way. We cannot think like machines do. So that is why we try to use block scope and use latent const instead of var, because the amount of error that we'll get would be a lot less. So I would also like to tell you that there is a big brother to JavaScript that is called TypeScript. And when you use TypeScript, they they like, if you write var in some of the programs, you will get an error and your code would not compile. So try to stick with let or const. Do not use var at all. I would highly recommend you in your uh, i- in your interviews not to use var, or in your code not to use var. And similarly, shadowing is when you try to override a value inside a function. So for example, if you define a variable a, and you want to define that variable again, but inside a block scope, you can do that. So that is called shadowing, because the variable a is referred to as another variable inside a block scope, and not what it is defined above the block scope. I hope you understand. I would give a Okay, amazing. Next, I would give you a so this is also a question that is asked when you try to it was asked to me in my Google interview question, like, what is higher order function? Because I told them that I am very proficient with the JavaScript. So they asked me this question, like, what is a higher order function? This question is not asked when you try to give interviews for a front end, but it is asked when you try to give interviews for back end and all. But I don't know why they asked me this question in my interview. So a higher order function is a function that takes other functions as argument or returns a function at its result. So it's similar to like when you try to call a func it's similar to like function a there function a co- function a inside a function is called higher order functions. uh, and there is not an easy way to like explain it, but I'll try to write it. Function a, and then you pass in a function. So there is a function a, inside it you passed a function b, and inside b you pass. So something like this. If you like, if you work, if you'll work in a backend kind of things, you will like define these kind of functions. And what this kind of function does is the whole execution context is created at a time. So when there is a so like when you want to save time, you try to do this, as it will give less errors, and it will also execute at a time, and the code completion time would be a lot less. So higher order functions are those. So the benefit of higher order functions is reusability. So just copy your code and paste it anywhere you want, and the code would work fine, because you have defined a function inside a function. So there is no chance that you will get a reference error or something error, because that function contains all the necessary things that it has. I hope you understand. Code clarity, you can see that this function, what this function does, if you like comment code and all those things, if you follow best coding practices. Functional programming principles. So most of the used examples for higher order functions is map, reduce, and filter. So what map does is transforms each element in an array. What filter does is creates a new array with element that meets a specific condition. What reduce does is accumulates a single value from an array. And next, so this is the code for map reduce, map filter and reduce. So there is a function where array.map is, you try to like multiply 2 with all the items with the array, so you get 10, 2, 4, 12. So you can see that when you use map or reduce, the code that you write is a lot less. So even interviewers ask the same kind of questions, that write this function with map, reduce or filter. So they will, i I don't recall a single interview where they didn't ask me reduce function or map function or filter function. So if they like, uh, Aniket will Ankit would send you this file. Try to like go through this function, these three functions. They are very important. I think we have come to an end. I would like to take up some questions. Next. So JavaScript has become integral. So this is just me explaining why do you use JavaScript and why it is necessary. So it is developer friendly. The complexity in your application is less, and you can interact with your engines at Google, the whole search engine that you see, google.com, that works on purely JavaScript. You can create responsive designs, make phone applications, and everything that you want. Next. Any questions? Any questions? Even whatever you feel like you can ask.
Yeah, you can put in a chat box, or if you wanna ask some
Yeah,
questions.
you can write in chat box.
Okay, guys, thank you for joining. We will be having next session very soon. I will be notifying you for the same. Please try to complete your assignment, and we will be getting in touch in next call. Okay. Good. Thank you, guys. Please wait for my email. I will be sharing some resources, some very cool resources on MediaWiki, like how we use JavaScript. Please do see that resource, and of course, do let